Oh my gosh. You're never gonna believe this. There is a guy standing on the side of the road who looks just like you. I'm about to hit him.
Cartoon Network completely screwed over the Looney Tunes show. The more I took the time to rewatch this show and collect my initial thoughts on the quality of the show overall, the more I believe that this was the case. So I took the time to look at the ratings and compare it to other shows around its initial runtime. The Looney Tunes show premiere had a 2.5 rating, which was released on May 3rd of 2011. Comparatively, Adventure Time's premiere also had a 2.5 rating on April 5th of 2010. There was only a 40k viewer difference. Crunching the numbers, the average for each of the show's first season is only a 6k viewer difference. With that in mind, talking about the season finale for the Looney Tunes show, Superbugs had a putrid 1.03 rating, almost half of what was the average rating for season 1. This should really tell you how the show was treated during its initial run. Now, granted, I would argue that the show itself did not necessarily fit the mold Cartoon Network was featuring at that time. However, the show had a great audience initially and potentially had an opportunity to dip its toes into the sitcom bag. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case here. So now, it's time for this bat to remember the Looney Tunes show. So the first thing I have to talk about is the character designs. Since this is a show that consists of a classic cast of characters, we do need to focus on how much of a difference there is between the previous versions. In this case, they actually do a spectacular job in modernizing the look of the characters. Honestly, at first glance, you don't see much of a difference in how they differ from each other. That's how good the redesigns are. The characters have a more sharper look and they don't really emphasize the smaller details of the fur in the animation overall. To be honest, the biggest drastic change was Lola Bunny, and that's not the only thing they changed about her. We'll get to that. But when talking about her overall design, to keep it blunt, she's a lot less sexualized compared to when she was first introduced in Space Jam. Which is probably why the show's design change was criticized, if we're being real. Now, getting into the design of the world overall, it's incredibly unique with using various amounts of paint splatter to show the details of certain objects throughout the show, which really fits with how they pulled off the intro as well, giving us the idea that an artist had a hand in making the world what it is in the show. I think it gives a chance to give respect to its preceding generation, as it was animated by hand in its initial debut. If you look carefully, you can see the details of the backgrounds by the strokes being used as if it was an actual painting. So I would say the animation is top notch. So I believe the show's greatest strengths are the personalities and relationships we see blossom as the show progresses. They always find ways to make all the scenarios more interesting. Even in the most basic plots, each character has a specific charm that elevates the scenes to create a memorable episode every time. That's especially the case with Bugs and Daffy, who are the main focus of the series as a whole. So let's start things off with one of our two main protagonists, Bugs Bunny. This version of Bugs is essentially the straight man of the dynamic duo when breaking them down. He's clearly the more reasonable of the two and is usually the main one trying to clean up the messes that occur. He's got a sarcastic undertone when he speaks to those that don't have a clear understanding of what is happening or just flat out refuse to be reasonable. Even with that, he does have his own flaws that get to him at times. He has the tendency to refuse help just out of spite, even though it's clear that he has no idea what he's doing at times. Plus, his moral compass does get in the way at times when he wants to help others in sticky situations, because that leads to other people taking advantage of that kindness. Though when he does feel wronged, he isn't afraid to get back at them one way or another. The moral compass also leads him to complicated paths of getting out of a situation without being confrontational with people that are close to him, which does more harm than good. I definitely understand that personally because there is that tendency of wanting everyone to like you that lingers. Plus, finding out that someone has some sort of dislike towards you can lead you to have unnecessary anxiety and stress. Yay. Either way, Bugs is someone who can be dry at times. However, he is very reliable and always willing to give out advice and push you in the right direction, even if it means receiving a migraine or two.
I don't do Mondays!
Next up, we have Daffy Duck. I have to say, they took the cockiness and narcissistic part of the character and pushed it to the max when it comes to Daffy. He is essentially a leech that will do anything to get what he wants, even if it's to the detriment of others. If there was an example of a character you would love to hate, he honestly would have to be the first one you could think of. He always pushes his own needs in front of everyone else and expects the world to be kneeling at his feet. He sees himself as a god. In reality, he's nothing but a cheap, lying, no-good snake. His awareness is at the bottom of the barrel, not because of his lacking intelligence, even though it does have a hand in that when common sense is concerned, but I think it's his self-absorbed mindset that sends him back from being competent. Now, with all those negative aspects, you would think that it would make it hard to enjoy him when he's on the screen. For me, it's quite the opposite. Reason being is that even as unbearable he can be, it doesn't go without some sort of punishment or at minimum be proven wrong on multiple occasions. He has plenty of eye-rolling inducing moments throughout the show, but he brings out the best in a variety of the characters as they react to his antics.
Well, mind games are no match for one of these!
Now getting into the side characters, I feel that there's only a small number of them that are worth mentioning individually, especially with some major changes that they decided to make when it comes to their personality. I'm talking about Lola Bunny in particular. Yeah. So as you know, Lola's first introduction was within the very first Space Jam movie with Michael Jordan. She came into the Looney Tunes franchise like a Little Caesar's pizza, hot and ready. Yeah, this version of Lola is not like that at all. And that's a good thing. Out of curiosity, I've seen the negative reviews on the show on various sites, and let's just say majority of them were simply old dudes reminiscing the OG style of the Looney Tunes because that's what they grew up with. And it was clear they were thinking with what's in their pants instead of what's in their brain. Lola bugged me the absolute most. In Space Jam though, she was represented as a strong, confident, and athletic female who has a huge role in the movie. Yeah, she definitely had a prominent role showing off those moves on the court, you know what I'm saying? Anyways, let's just talk about Lola. She is so much more interesting and developed just from her introduction alone. To keep it simple, she's an idiot. And it works so much better. She's an incredibly rich but dim-witted woman that can be very obsessed with certain people and objects. I consider her the wild card of the show, because you really don't know what to expect when she plays a prominent role within an episode. Whatever decision she makes in a situation, she is committed to it, and goes completely overboard with it. Her relationship with Bugs is incredibly unique as well. She finds some interesting ways to keep Bugs on her side, even if she is completely unbearable. Their complicated relationship is the best of the series for sure, and they always pique my interest when we see the two together. She's a fun character to see grow as the series went on, and I completely fell in love with her right from the start.
Not every girl is as stable as me.
Now let's go ahead to Porky, the punching bag for the show. There's no way to sugarcoat this. He's desperate, lonely, he's an incel. Yeah, there are a few things about the show that may not have aged that well, but it still fits the mold of what makes a good sitcom. The thing about Porky is that he always ends up being the butt of everyone's jokes. He gets bullied constantly throughout the series, and very rarely gets a dub. He's the perfect enablers for Daffy and his shenanigans. Even after taking all his money to buy a freaking yacht, he still ends up doing a lot for Daffy. It really shows how desperate this dude is and how easily he gets duped by the smallest gesture of kindness, when it is clear that the person is only saying those things to get what they want from him. Personally, he's my least favorite character, but I think it's mainly because I'm not fond of this character trope personally. There are certainly moments where he does place his foot down, but that leads him into a bad situation most of the time. That can get pretty tiring when we see episodes focused on Porky. It was certainly an interesting place for a character like this in the early 2010s, considering that CN was starting to transition into exploring the types of attractions slowly. I will say, at least for me, it didn't age too well with how often they pressed Porky into having a girlfriend, but that's a whole conversation.
I gotta get a girlfriend.
So it's time to talk about the newest addition to the Looney Tunes universe, Tina Russo. So Tina is essentially Daffy's girlfriend. That is certainly surprising considering the version of Daffy we got. However, this is a character that seems very open to taking on the challenge of building someone's character. As she has stated,
I like a project.
Which fits her overall personality well. She's the definition of a hard worker and is always willing to tell it like it is. I would say she is similar to Bugs in a way, being someone who is a hard worker and willing to help out those she is close to. Honestly, Tina is a character that is essentially tied to Daffy, as she isn't someone who can really hold her own like the other main casts. I can't say there's a lot to go for her when she's mainly someone who is a tool for guidance in most of the stories being told, and there's not much anything else to flesh her out. She's a solid character overall, but unfortunately she leaves a lot to be desired as one of the mainstays.
But maybe if the right person got a hold of it and cleans it up, maybe they could take that disgusting building and turn it into something not so disgusting.
So to give a quick note of other characters that played a smaller role during the show, they all build up a very strong supporting cast. Graydon gave us different perspectives of a situation many times. Foghorn Leghorn is portrayed as a successful entrepreneur, which works wonders with the voice he has. Yosemite Sam is your begrudged neighbor. Speedy has his own successful business and is a lending voice for Bugs. Which Lisa and Gossamer were alright, but the voices used probably leaves you questioning what they were thinking depending on who you ask. In any case, the cast is very well diverse and it leads to a lot of memorable scenes within the show that helps raise its quality in my eyes. So this version for the Looney Tunes is quite clearly a very different type of show compared to what we have seen prior to this classic cast of characters, which honestly is one of the most interesting changes I've seen in a very long time. They stayed true to the original designs for the most part, but they've completely relied on the characteristics of the cast. I've always been one to welcome new changes to a franchise. I mean, heck, look at the majority of my content. So I would say this one was certainly welcomed in my eyes. They were able to play this sitcom type of comedy to perfection within the show. Their best jokes come with how they were timed. It's what you expect from a sitcom. Sometimes the most hilarious moments come from the smallest actions that happen within the show. They do have some aspects of slapstick within the show itself. While it's not as frequent, they do take the time to bring it in when the show does call for it. I also do love it when they connect the episodes in the most subtle of ways, and not just from a relationship perspective, but also mentioning events that occurred to them earlier in the season. That would catch your interest as to what happened in a previous episode. I can appreciate how much they want to rely on the small details and how the characters interact with one another. It really placed a blueprint on how a family-friendly comedy sitcom can work. I would love to see something in a similar capacity in the current time. There's so many aspects of the show that can be used for a network to make the next cartoon sitcom pioneer. The biggest is how much care they put into the character development throughout the show. Just seeing how they interact with one another and seeing them grow as the episode concluded was such a treat to watch each time. They do bring some aspects of the OG's comedy with the dashes of slapstick that gets added. The style used within the show was very distinct and beautiful, especially if you look at the small details. It makes it feel like you're breaking down a painting if you see how they texturize certain items. You can see the same with how they build certain jokes within the show as well. Their comedic timing is top notch, and they know how to build a plot in an interesting way to reach a satisfying conclusion. I really do hope we see another family-friendly sitcom get another shot and blow up like I would have hoped for the Looney Tunes Show. There are a couple that have that potential, but we'll have to wait and see if they can be mainstays in the animation community. Until then, I think the Looney Tunes Show is a classic to go back to, and is definite proof that this format could work, and is one of the better reboots in animation history. Thank you for taking the time to remember the Looney Tunes Show, and thanks to the Grapes on Patreon. If you'd like a shout out and watch a review a day prior, go to my Patreon. Check out my other socials to get the latest updates and life shenanigans. If you'd like to see more Remember reviews, click on the videos to the left. Click the subscribe and bell icon to get the latest from me. Until then, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.